Hello. Hi everyone. Welcome back. We are so excited today because Claire and I have got Laura joining us all the way from the USA. So welcome, Laura. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Laura.
Absolutely happy to be here.
Yeah, it's brilliant to speak to you. Really excited to have you on this podcast because obviously a lot's been happening with mini athletes in the USA, so it's really exciting to speak to you. So just to give people a bit of background, I guess, Laura here is the founder of Snapology, which is also an educational franchise that uses the power of play to teach children. It was kind of STEM concepts through interactive activities like, I mean, you'll correct me, Laura, if I'm wrong, but it was, Lego bricks and robotics and coding and things like that. And Snapology completely revolutionized, I guess, in the US, the way the children engaged with that learning and a hands-on approach and made it really fun and accessible. And in addition to your work with Snapology, Laura is now our strategic advisor to mini athletics in the USA, which is obviously really exciting for us because you bring such a lot of experience and knowledge. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us today. I think Claire's going to put you in the hot seat.
So as we like to start the podcast with three questions for Laura, just a 1 or 2 word answer. Laura will expand on them later. Just whatever comes into your head first, basically. So we'll start with what is the biggest reward of owning a franchise?
Flexibility.
Brilliant.
Great one.
Next question. What is the key ingredient for success in a franchise?
Not sure if it's one word, but I would say follow the system.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And lastly, about mini athletics, what excites you most about the future of mini athletics?
For the US, I just think it's an untapped market. It's just, I mean, what you're doing is different from anything else that's here. So I think that's just, it's a new concept essentially.
Fantastic. You did really well there. Very good.
Didn't keep it to one word, but
That was great. I'll accept a few. Great. So would you like to start by telling us a little bit about yourself, Laura? Right from before Snapology even, all about you.
yeah, sure. So I'll start with, kind of the highlights and what the things that sort of led to Snapology. But essentially, I went to college. I was a math major, so I'm a kind of a big math finance nerd, and I started a career in healthcare as an actuary, which was great. I loved it, and I still continue to do that. But I had always kind of had this entrepreneurial bug. My parents actually owned a small business. They started when I was about 11 years old. And so, most of my, sort of middle school and high school years were spent helping them out with little things in their business. And I knew that young that like someday that I definitely wanted to have what they had. I saw the way my parents worked together. I saw the way small business worked. I saw the way they grew something from nothing. Just and with them, even the flexibility to be able to do the things that they wanted to do, and have the things that they wanted to have. And so I knew pretty young, but like most kids, I finished high school, went to college. Math was the thing I was good at. And
Yeah.
so that's what I pursued. Again, had a great career, but gosh, it didn't take long. I mean, in my early 20s, I decided that I wanted to own a franchise. And
Okay.
so I actually purchased a franchise. It was a senior care franchise. So essentially providing a custodial type care to seniors in their homes, letting them stay in their homes a little bit longer.
Okay.
And so that ran that business for a few years. Wasn't a great fit for a young person in their 20s. But I lived in an area of the United States where there was a really high elderly population. So I had kind of done my research and the business did well. But ultimately, once I kind of got to a point where I wanted to have children, it just wasn't the right fit. It was a 24/7 type of business where you had people on call if somebody, needed something in the middle of the night. So
Yeah, of course.
ultimately sold that. Was a good experience for me though. Learned a ton, right? And that's where I started to learn about franchising and what franchising was and the different things that franchising can provide to somebody. And for me, I needed a franchise because I was, number one, younger, but even not being younger, I had experience in different areas of business, but I needed that. I needed those guide rails. I needed
Yeah.
somebody to help me to provide that information, it would have been extremely difficult and extremely time consuming for me to have built something on my own, particularly at that stage of life, right?
Yeah.
Where, you know,
Yeah, I was still
getting
young.
married, having kids, I'm in my 20s, I'm, still going out with my friends. And
Yeah.
so I ran that business for a few years and then went back, sold it, went back to actuarial work, and then had an opportunity to join in another franchise. So I owned a second franchise.
Oh,
However, at the time, my husband ran the franchise. So I was just kind of on the
okay.
backside, but I got to see two franchises run. He still has that franchise, still runs that franchise, still doing well. But eventually I kind of broke off on my own and I wanted to do something. And at this point, I'm in my mid 30s, I'd say. And when I was kind of like, I really want to do something for myself. I really wanted to have a business of my own. My children were very young.
Mm.
And my older son, who was probably about 4 or 5 at the time, he was crazy into Lego bricks. Like you could walk in his room at any time and you could just scoop up a whole, handful. He was in it and loved it. And so I was a mom. I was trying to raise, two little boys
Mm.
at the time. I wanted to own my own business. I was looking for activities. My boys weren't really into sports. They kind of dabbled in some things here and there, tried baseball and soccer and all the traditional things, but they weren't real competitive. None of it really kind of resonated with them, but they were very academic. I mean, they're the type of kids that, you walk in the kitchen and they've taken apart the toaster because they want to see how it works, right? Exactly, exactly. I mean, nice that you're inquisitive, but now we have to buy a new toaster.
Yeah.
But
Maybe they've created something new.
Yeah.
exactly. So while I was trying to find activities to, help the boys with social skills and do things like that, I was, trying to find activities for them. I was also trying to find a business for myself. I mean, really my worlds just kind of collided and I realized, you know what? The business is something for the kids. That's really what I was looking for. And so the Lego bricks just really kind of struck with me because my son was so into that. And there really wasn't anybody at the time doing anything with that. And STEM was just starting to
Yeah.
grab hold in the US, because we're going back nearly 15 years now, right? So
Yeah.
STEM is very popular now and everybody knows what it is. But if you go back 15 years, there weren't STEM schools. There weren't, you weren't even doing that inside schools. There were a few scattered programs here and there. And so I hit the market at the right time. I went down to my sister lived 4 doors down. I walked down to her house and I said, look, I'm thinking about starting my own business. Here's the idea. You want to do it with me. She didn't have kids at the time, but she was like, "Yep, that's perfect. I'm in." So my sister and I were off. My best friend from high school is a school teacher, so I asked her to help
Right.
us write some curriculum.
Mm.
Starting a business sometimes is all about family and friends, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah,
the
true.
beginning of what you do, and this was no different. So, hooked up with a couple people in my area that were starting to kind of dabble in this kind of stuff, and it just took off. I mean, and the beauty of it really was I wasn't really trying to start a franchise. I was just trying to start a business for myself. And I kind of fell into it with everything. Once I started to get going and I realized, wow, you could really do this anywhere and it was franchisable. Then, I began to sort of, document everything but it took off. I mean, we have recreation centers here. I'm not sure what you guys have, like youth program type
Yeah.
organizations, right? So I went to one of them and offered a robotics program, one of the first programs that my friend wrote. Um, and I offered the program there, and within 2 hours of enrollment opening, we had a wait list. So
Wow.
it was like pent up demand, right? It's like what do I do with my kids? And I was also in a cold weather state in the US, so in the winter your kids are cooped up
Yeah.
and you're looking for inside
Mm.
activities to do with them. And so it just I mean, I always say that kind of success is, kind of 90%, perseverance and 10% luck. And I hit the luck, right? Because I started the business right when STEM was becoming popular, and and there really wasn't anything like it in the marketplace, and it really worked out. And when I started the franchise, I had the experience of being a franchisee
Mhm.
twice. So I had seen it from both sides. So when I created the franchise, we called ourselves the unfranchise for a little bit. I thought that was cool. I've moved away from that. But I didn't want people to think that it was so prescriptive that they were no longer running their own business. And that's just franchising. I didn't have to call it the unfranchise. I mean, that's just how franchising works. It's we give you the tools and the resources. And, I've really fallen in love with franchising over the time period just because of the opportunities that it gives somebody that would take them, years and years and cost me a lot of money, when we started, and the
Yeah.
mistakes that you make, right? And so you save that from your franchisees. So I mean, essentially, that's kind of what we did. We started Snapology back in 2010. It kind of started 2011 was really when it got going. And then we grew it to 180 locations, sold it to private equity, and stayed on board for a bit, and then retired from it. So I'm still what they call a brand ambassador. I will always be Snapology's biggest fan, but yeah. So now that kind of brings me to where I am today.
It is incredible the way you build, because it did build fast. And like you say, lucky that STEM, was up and coming then, but you still had to identify,
Yes.
amazing that you identified that. And like you say, your franchising experience from before, because we were interested to ask you all of that, because it's interesting to know what people's experience of franchising is before they come into themselves, because everyone seems to have different experiences. What would you say? So in building Snapology, obviously it sounds like it happened rapidly, and you drove the drive behind that. But what would you say that your highlights were of building the brand? Like, what was your particular passion, I guess, behind it?
Yeah, it's interesting because as I look in hindsight, and people say all the time, like, how do I do what you do? How do I
Yeah.
build what you build?
Yeah.
I wish it was as intentional as people think that it was. Some of it was intentional for sure, right? So very early on, I started to build what is now our operations manual, which is basically just kind of organizing and cataloging everything that I was doing, right? Where I was having success, that kind of the do's and don'ts, right? Where I didn't have success, don't worry about this because that's, like probably not going to
True.
work for you. So it's really, I think for me, I think being open to kind of where the market took me, being open to the feedback that I was getting really drove a lot of the success. So I wouldn't say that I intentionally kind of did this or that. I mean, there's certainly times where I sat down and, obviously had goals and strategies for the year. But I think my biggest success in building the franchise itself, it's different when you're a franchisee, I think, a little bit. But in building the franchise was being open to maybe shifting directions a little bit. There are a lot of ways you can go, right? I mean, when STEM education, I mean, I could have taken it to be 100% coding platform. I could
Yeah.
have taken it to be 100% engineering platform, right? I could have moved away from Lego bricks. So I'd say probably, other than the coding, the vast majority of our programs use Lego bricks. There was another product we used called Connects for littler kids. Yeah,
Yeah.
just because dexterity wise, the Connects was a little easier for the preschoolers.
Mm.
We could have moved away from that at different points in time. And I had read so many times that the number one mistake that businesses make is they want to be all things to all people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be somebody who did cooking and art and, sports of any kind or whatever. Like, we were really good. Like, we had developed solid curriculum. I had behavioral health experts in with me, making sure that our curriculum was written so that kids that had, extra needs would, do well in our programs, all the way from extra needs to gifted, right? I wanted to make sure that gifted children, did well in our program as well and had what they needed. So I think for me, like, it wasn't really scripted so much as really kind of following my gut, following my heart, doubling down on the things that are working and
Yep.
knowing when to abandon the things that aren't. If we put out a program and it didn't do well, okay, I'm not going to spend a ton of time and energy to change it or do something different. Let's stick with what we know. We ended up with, I think we've got probably 15 to 20 different robotics programs now. It's doing really well. Some of the themed programs, we doubled down on them, and we've got, several programs that are based on like video game type things with
Okay.
kids. And so
Yeah.
it was really just understanding the market and being able to follow the market, but without being all things to all people, right? Sticking with what you
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
We think it's absolutely amazing what you've done with Snapology. And to be honest, your story is very similar to Kirk and I's story. When we had our own two boys, they were probably the opposite, whereas they were very sporty and very active and loved sort of running and jumping and throwing. But we were in the same position. We wanted to find a class that was suitable for them, and we couldn't. So we created Mini Athletics. So and we're absolutely honoured to have you on board, and you've been giving us some great tips and helping us with Mini Athletics in the US. We're so proud to be in the US right now. It's absolutely amazing, and I just hope that we can do as well as you did in the US, because we think our program is similar in terms of it's something that's not necessarily there right now. So we're delighted to have you on board, as I said. And what do you love about Mini Athletics? What got you involved, basically?
Yeah, it's funny, when I heard your story, it is really the identical story, right? Every kid is different. And that's one of the reasons when I did ultimately sell it to private equity, I sold to a company called Unleash Brands. And so the idea there, I mean, they have like an adventure park, kind of like a trampoline park plus. They've got like a gymnastics program, a martial arts program. And so I think what attracted me to mini athletics is the idea that every kid is different, right? Every kid's has their thing that makes them feel confident, or we want every kid to be able to thrive in whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I think the way that you're approaching, the way that mini athletics approach things, I love, because I actually think my children would have loved your program, because it's so the word athletics doesn't mean track and field in the
Yeah.
US. I think we've kind of figured that out. But
Mm.
but the fact that you're based on track and field, number one, is different than anything that we have over here. And so that obviously is attractive as well, and that it's kind of new and different. But just the fundamentals of running and jumping and throwing, my kids would have loved that at that age.
Yeah.
And so it's done, I think the way that you approach it, it's done in a way that really any child can do it, whether they have that sort of, competitive edge and that propensity to go to sports. I think, a child like that does really well in the program. But I think, a child like my son Sebastian, who just, of course he's a little boy. He loves to run and jump and throw. He didn't necessarily want to kick a soccer ball around. He didn't necessarily, want to play baseball. He wasn't really into sort of those targeted sports per
Yeah.
se. But what kid doesn't want to run and jump and throw? I mean, he's jumping off the furniture and running around with his brother, and I mean, they're two little boys. Like,
And they
try to
fit.
keep them from running, jumping, and throwing. So I think part of it really resonated with me, because that would have been a great program for me to put my boys in. And I don't know what, as I think about it, like what child wouldn't want to be in that, and what parent doesn't want their kid to go run and jump and throw for an hour and get tired out, right?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
So I think just really, when I talk to you guys, your story's so similar. The way you approach it is so similar. When I looked at some of your materials, I told Kirk at one point, your operations manual is better than the one I had for Snapology. I mean, it's very thorough. I think the support that you provide franchisees, and I think just kind of everything sort of coming together really made me feel, I mean, number one, comfortable with you guys, but also that this, I mean, it should already be a huge success in the United States. I mean, I think once the word gets out, it's just, what you're doing is so, just like Snapology is so fundamental to kids' upbringing, that, you're really providing, a great product to the community.
Yeah, we really do, we're so passionate that we really do believe that it will be amazing in the US. Like you said, it's for It is for every child. Okay, yeah, some children are more sporty or they prefer the tech or whatever. But a bit like you, a sporty child could have come into Snapology
Good.
and been like, oh, wow, this is incredible. Like it's giving them that kind of that positive, introduction into whatever it might be. So yeah, I mean, that's brilliant to hear that mini athletics will be
Yeah.
such a success.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, we're talking about how, you're not in the U.S., right? You're kind of just starting out. But the other beauty is you've proven your concept. You've got, so many locations in the UK, and we with Snapology we had some international locations. Kids are kids. I mean, you've proven it in the US. It's exactly the same in the US. Kids aren't any different in the US than they are. Now, there's some nuances that obviously are a little different between the two countries, but as far as success, those nuances don't hold you back from being success. We say a few words a little bit differently, we might approach a school a little bit differently, or you know what I mean, but those things are, so quickly figured out, and I think we already have kind of identified all of those. I mean, it's just right now it's a great time to kind of get into this because you can go everywhere in the US. There's no sold out cities, right? I mean,
Yeah,
anyone in the US can, participate.
Yeah,
yeah,
we've learned such a lot from you, Laura. Like even before you came on board, sort of officially, you were ever so kind to sort of meet with us and talk us through, what thing, like you say, that language difference almost that there is between certain things, and just to keep us on track. Because, like you say, it's a very similar program, but we just want to make sure that it, is possible for it to be rolled out throughout the USA, and you've been instrumental in that, and you're absolutely fantastic. And I suppose as a woman in business, we've got quite a lot of women franchisees, and I guess you probably had lots of girls in your program, and we've got lots of girls in our program. But what are you most proud of by encouraging women into business? Because you've done a great job, and it's amazing.
Yeah, well, we just had the Super Bowl the other night. Nike had a great commercial for women. I don't know if you guys watched that, but it was very empowering for women, and basically that you can do anything. Just because, people think you can't do it, go ahead out there and
yeah,
do it. And I think, with sports, with education, with academics, I think that women are really, really starting to make a mark and be noticed more and more, right? And it's tough because as a woman in business, I mean, you guys have probably experienced this too. There are times where you feel like maybe you're being held back a little bit just because of your gender. And so my hope is that we can build enough confidence in young girls, and we can sort of build that kind of inner strength, right, that comes because my whole career, I'm not a shy person. I'm not, somebody to kind of sit back. But there
mm,
are times in my career where I did stay back because I didn't want to push the envelope too much. I didn't want to do those things. And I think that by building confidence in girls at a younger age, athletically, academically, just in general, that as they become, the age where they're getting jobs and they're pursuing their careers, that inner confidence is just there, that they won't necessarily maybe have that inner voice saying, well, maybe you should just take a step back, maybe,
yeah,
and so we can kind of build that in women, and hopefully society changes along with it. And if those two things can work together, where society bends a little bit and
yeah,
girls are a little bit more assertive in those areas, then you won't have a gender gap anymore.
yeah. Well, it's definitely it's shrinking, isn't it? But yeah, like Claire said, like we're really proud that there's a lot of female franchisees in our network. Did you have a lot of female franchisees in Snapology as well? Did you notice?
Yeah, we did. We had a good mix. I will say we had a good mix of male and female owners. I think the number one thing in probably mini athletics and in Snapology is a lot of our owners were just parents who kind of wanted
Yeah,
these programs
yeah,
for their kids, right? So they're
yeah,
passionate about children. Not all of them. I mean, there were definitely some folks that didn't have children, or even we had some retirees where their children were grown. But I think that we also at Snapology were attractive to some engineers, which brought in
mm,
stereotypically a few more men as owners.
yeah,
Not
it's
that there
true.
aren't a lot of women engineers out there, but so we had a good mix. I think we were probably 60 to 70% women owned.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it was a good percentage. We had a lot of husbands and wives too. Again, just
We have a lot of those. Yeah.
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
because of the whole parenting thing. I mean, I love it. I mean, I love these types of business for families because, my kids grew up in it.
Mm.
They participated in every program, they participated in everything that, we did, and now they're both in college and they're looking at owning their own business someday, right? They're in business management courses and entrepreneurship programs. And so, kind of, the side of going into business as a family is it, in these types of things with young kids is they see what you're doing and, for young girls and for young boys, it can really help them,
Well, yeah.
go into those things in the future. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your
I
story is so so inspiring. So I'm not surprised to hear that your own boys are got the bug too.
They're good kids. They're really good kids. I mean, I'm excited for their future, and their father owns a business as well, so they've kind of been in and around that their whole lives. They're mature. They know that they're young to open a business, right out of college, and so they understand they'll probably go work for somebody else. We're getting close to my oldest graduating here, and so yeah, I mean, but it's incredible just what business ownership provides to you as just an individual, but then also to your family, helping you, become more engaged in your community. I mean, it really is kind of a neat environment to be in.
Yeah, my boys are definitely, my boys are like there all the time. And if we're like this weekend, we're off to see franchisees in Ireland, so they're coming with me. And yeah, we went to the US last year, and this time last year actually, and launched in Lake Norman, and they came and they got involved in the launch, and it's just super exciting to be able to do that and be able to get them involved. Like, love it.
Yeah, it really is. It's really neat just to see and what they pick up on. There's a funny story. When my kids were in middle school, which they were probably 11, 12 years old, I got a call from the principal, and the principal told me that my boys were going to have to stop running their business out of the school. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They had learned in Snapology class, one of the things that we did was a little bit of origami. So they had made like these little little ninja kind of like throwing stars. I'm not sure what exactly they're called.
Mm.
Well, so my kids had started a business where they were selling them for $1. And I sat my kids down. First, I was just so darn curious as to what they were doing. So I sat them down and I'm like, well, the principal called. I didn't tell them they were in trouble. I'm like, the principal called me, like, what do you guys have going on? One of my sons was the CEO, the other son was the chief operating officer. They had a sales guy that they paid commission, right?
It's
And
brilliant.
so, I mean, they were paying attention. Like they had it all kind of figured out. And I said, well, principal called and you're not really allowed to do that. You need to stop doing it. And so my younger son looks at me and he goes, but we have customers who have already paid. How do we service our customers? He said it in a little kid kind of way, but that's basically what he was saying. It was hysterical, and I thought, boy, they are paying attention a lot more than you think that they are.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. They absorb everything, don't they? It's the same as my eldest is. So she's nearly 14 and she loves maths too. She's great at maths.
Great.
Already, she always links it back when she's talking about, GCSE and then her university and things like that. Yeah, so maybe I'll do maths and then I'll know the business side. And then with mini athletic, and then she like links it again into kind of the business mind, I guess. And that's what happens when your children grow up.
Yeah, when they're around, I mean, small business, they did everything. I mean, they would come into the office with me, they assisted
Yeah.
in classes, they would, do little things in the office. I mean, once they got a little older, I'd have them, looking at spreadsheets and different things that I was doing. I mean, you got to get the job done, right? And especially when I was little, I didn't have a choice. I had to take them with me, right? I had to work and, childcare doesn't always, cooperate with you. And so, yeah, that's great though. I'll talk to your daughter when she's
Yeah,
when she's ready.
thinking that I'll send her your way.
That's right. That's right.
That was great, because we have had other conversations with new franchisees recently, and they've got their kids involved as well. On the last podcast we did, they said they were assisting and they were paying them a small amount of money to assist, and they're only like 7, aren't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
really.
The whole we do think at Mini Athletics we are a big family, and we do encourage the franchisees to get their families involved, and it is really something that we are quite proud of.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's perfect too, right? A 7-year-old is, the big kid, the cool kid to like a 3 or 4-year-old. I mean, we had that at Snapology all the time. My younger son, for whatever reason, he was really good with kids with special needs. And so I would partner him with a child with some extra needs all the time. And because he had the patience and, you know what I mean, he could still let that child do everything they needed to do. And they loved it, right? Much better than even an adult working with them, because my son had that kid mindset, right?
Yeah.
They were building something together as buddies, but yet my son was also kind of, helping and guiding a little bit. They just, the little kids think the big kids are so cool, so that
Yeah, they
that
love.
7-year-olds, sometimes probably more effective than an adult.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But when we go to camps, or when we have our camps running in the holidays, quite often if my coaches are down, are running the camps, if I drop in, the children then afterwards, my coaches tell me I'm the old lady and they're the young girls.
Ouch.
Really? You say they see me as the old lady, but these young, vibrant coaches, they love it. I mean, I don't take it personally, maybe I should, but it's true. The children, it's relatable for them, isn't it? To have the
I
older.
think they meant wise. I think they meant the wise lady, not the old lady.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to go with that. Next time I'll tell them that.
Well, thank you so much, Laura. It's been great to hear your story. We're so proud to have you as part of our Mini
Yeah, we
Athletics.
really are.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. You guys are great. I mean, you've built the franchise the right way. I've seen a lot of franchises that, people just kind of throw together and then start selling. I mean, you have such a great program, such great support. I mean, you've really done franchising the way it's meant to be done, right? And the opportunity that you provide is incredible. So I'm happy to be a part of the organization.
Thank you so much.
It's so exciting for us. Yeah, thank you for today, Laura. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you, guys. Thanks.